Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton, along with Greg Matusak. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Kevin. I'm happy to be here. I just had a birthday this week, and I am so old this week that I actually forgot how old I am. Someone had to remind me because I did the math wrong for the past 6 months.
Did your twin brother remember to send you a happy birthday greeting?
We call each other at this point in our lives. I'm kind of over. I get like a steak and I move on with my life. But I can't believe it was the day of my birthday. Someone told me, they were like, you're this old. And I was like, I lost a year already. But besides that, I'm doing great. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm good. And I'm going to come back to that, but I don't want to go too long without saying hello. First of all, Ward Anderson has another week off and he's doing well. Ward, we miss you. And I wanted to introduce our guest tonight, Linda Norrie, who is a very good friend of mine. She is my next door neighbor. Our houses are literally, 20 feet apart. And Linda is a financial advisor. She does long-term estate planning, and she's also quite the entrepreneur. Linda, you've opened, in the time I've known you, which is only about a year and almost a year and a half, You've started like 2 or 3 businesses, right?
I have, Kevin. Yes. I was supposed to start like my retirement years, and instead I've added to my resume.
What are some of the new businesses? I know you're doing like garage surfaces.
So one of my businesses is called Artisan Coatings, and I guess that's a plug, but we take cement and we coat it with like pool deck, like cool coats for pool decks or faux finishes. We make it look like rocks and overlay. And then we also do garages, epoxy garages, which again, I know way more than cement than I ever thought I would. This is kind of a new business. I started as a consultant for them and saw that the business needed some growth and needed a little bit more help. So I actually bought into the company. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So are you like the local Shark Tank? Do people come to you and they're like, I've got an idea, like sailor hats for dogs that actually fit dogs?
Yeah.
And you're like,
little bit.
And you're like, yeah, I'm going to sit on that one. But
Yeah.
And then you go, sailor hats, cowboy hats are where it's at.
Exactly. Yes, I do. A lot of my business deals started to me just consulting, trying to help somebody, some small business get to like the next level, putting in, organizational tools and whatnot, management tools. But a couple of them I wound up just being involved with forever. So
there you go.
Yeah.
And Greg, Linda mentioned pools, which is a segue to me mentioning that Linda and her husband, Art, great guy, they decided about a little over a year ago. Well, not decided. They had made the decision long ago, but they started building a pool almost a year ago, right, Linda?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And I don't know whether you've ever lived next to someone who's put a pool into their house. The end product is always amazing. But for a long time, in many cases, it's probably 3 to 6 months. In this case, it was almost a year. You've got tractors going in and out day by day, work crews.
Yes. I'm sorry, Kevin. And not to mention that lovely porta potty that was on the corner of my property for like 6 months. Yes.
Are you kidding? A porta potty means it increases the value of the neighborhood. It just means everyone has an extra toilet.
That's right. It's another half bath when you sell your house.
Yeah.
And Kevin and Jessica were more than wonderful. When I was starting this, I actually called everybody and said, I'm sorry in advance, and you can use the pool anytime you want.
And now we have this great place to hang out during the summer, but enough of our personal lives. So Linda, we are thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
We'll talk more about you as we get into some of the topics that tangentially, your expertise relates to. But we wanted to start with what everybody's talking about, which is the Olympics. I've been watching it today. Linda, you told me you've been watching a lot of it too.
Yes.
Greg, have you been in front of the TV?
I've been watching a little bit, not that much. My mother-in-law has been keeping me like abreast of what's going on. She came up and she's like, skateboarding's on. We got to go watch skateboarding. I said, this will just drive Kevin nuts. He hates these new sports. And,
I'm a real old man about that. I think it's a little silly.
Did you watch the opening ceremonies?
I did. Yeah, I did. I watched every country come through. I watched every second of it. Yes, I did.
Wow. So the controversy so far, luckily it's not in the games, aside from the fact that the men's U.S. basketball team got trounced in the final, 3 minutes of their match against France, which is somewhat of an upset. But all of the controversies have been more off the field than on the field, which I think is a good thing. The one that struck me was this kerfuffle over what the women's beach handball teams have to wear, which apparently, I never thought much about it, but apparently they are required to wear bikini bottoms, even though Norway and probably several of the other teams would prefer to wear something that's less revealing and more dignified. So, Linda, I'm going to give you the first crack at this. I would imagine that you agree.
Agree what?
With the Norway position.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What what you wear on your bottoms have to do with how you perform? And I don't know if anybody caught the men's volleyball today, men's beach volleyball, but they weren't wearing Speedos.
No, they wear long shorts. And I don't understand why the women's, because, they gave some technical reason for it that was all bullshit. I mean, we all know that they do it for ratings.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's not right, especially, well, look at the women's gymnastics team, for example, the horrible sexual, I don't want to say scandal, crimes that perpetrated. We have to be careful about over-sexualizing athletes who are not there to be sexualized, but there to compete. Women athletes are there to compete. Men athletes are there to compete. I'll step off my soapbox.
It was a worthy soapbox. And Greg, you had said something about the German gymnastics squad wearing some kind of bodysuits.
Yeah, instead of a leotard, they were wearing all their legs were covered, most of their arms were covered, and I think we should be looking forward to where athletes should feel comfortable wearing the uniform that makes them feel comfortable.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Now, there was a kerfuffle, was it 8 years ago in the Olympics, where there was a swimsuit that supposedly made you swim faster?
I vaguely remember something about that, yes.
That's what I was going to bring up, too. It's like you see swimming, and you see in the years in the past, they've gone from wearing Speedos to wearing full body suits, back to Speedos. Some wear longer shorts, so why is there a choice there? But yet somebody who's hitting a volleyball around has to wear a bikini bottom.
Yeah, whatever makes you feel comfortable. There was a para-Olympian this year named Olivia Breen from the UK, and it wasn't at the Olympics, but at a competition earlier this year where she was told her shorts were too revealing, and she was told that she would have to wear much baggier shorts. And she said that this was a uniform that she had used, and she had won in previous Olympics also for Britain.
Interesting.
And so now they're saying maybe we should. Once again, we are focusing on women's uniforms, not on men's.
But I think that's
where the double standard.
Right. That's the double standard in sports.
There you go. And speaking of sports and double standards, the Cleveland Indians finally got around to officially changing their name this week. And people are still not happy because of the name that they chose, the Cleveland Guardians.
What's wrong with the name Guardians?
It sounds to me like a militia group. And I just don't think that was the best choice.
Because you're from New York.
Yeah. Well, there actually are militia groups called the Guardians. They usually have something in front of the word guardian, but
right.
But I just think that in this day and time, it feels like they've given up one controversial name for potentially another one. That's my feeling. What about you?
Oh, well, I'm from Ohio. I live in Ohio. I choose to.
No one's holding that against you.
I'm right. I choose to live in Ohio. But also, let's be clear, I live in Cincinnati, and there is a Cincinnati-Cleveland rivalry, and I probably would make fun of whatever name they choose. But in all honesty, if you've been to Cleveland, there's these 4 statues, and it's the
traffic guardians.
Yeah, it's these giant Gothic Guardians of Traffic, I think it's called, or
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's well known. If you were to say this in Cleveland, hey, 4 birds hit the Guardians today, well, they would know exactly what you were talking about, and they
Right.
feel bad for the birds. You know, I was trying to think of a sentence that you could use that in, or, hey, they're lighting up the Guardians with different lights tonight. They would know exactly what they're talking about. It's a very regional, very something that they could talk about with pride. Okay. And you're right. On a national level, it may not fit. But I don't think they were going for that.
No, I don't think they were going for it. And I understand, like you said, it's a regional reference. People from Cleveland know it and are very proud of it, and that's cool. I just gave my opinion that I didn't think it was the best choice.
I have a question. What was offensive with Indian? And I don't know if I'm not trying to be naive. I understand Redskins, I understand Braves, I understand, but what's offensive about Indian?
Well, I once had a nanny when Max was like 1 year old, and we talked about playing Cowboys and Indians, and she said to me, "Excuse me, we are, and I am a Native American."
Okay.
So I assume that that's it. It's that they've not adopted, but they prefer the phrase Native Americans, and they feel that Indians is somehow a slur. And again, whether you or I agree with that, I mean, I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, no. I wasn't saying because I agree or disagree. I was just actually asking the question because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm not Indian or Native American, so I don't have any right to say that it's not offensive.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
If Native Americans find it offensive, then it's offensive.
And I'm going to ask you about something political right now, Linda, because I always err to the side of if it bothers someone else, and not just one person, but if it bothers a large group of people, I always feel that respect for other people means showing some deference to that opinion. And with that in mind, as you and I know, we were talking about statues in towns. Our town famously still has a statue of a Confederate soldier that has become rather controversial because it's one of the ones that are still standing. It's not of a general, but it's of a Confederate foot soldier. And there are people in the town that feel that it is inappropriate because the Confederacy was technically a traitorous organization that was waging war against the United States. And there is a movement to take it down. Now, you and I have never discussed this. We've discussed other political things, but I'm wondering how you feel about this.
I agree that if a group of people find it offensive, then it's offensive. I don't think that anyone's trying to erase history by saying something's offensive. So a statue like that maybe belongs in a museum or a library, but maybe not in our town square.
Yeah.
But again, I don't find it offensive personally. So I guess I'm kind of neutral with whether or not we should take it down. But at the end of the day, yes, the Confederacy fought to keep slavery and other things, by the way. Slavery was just one issue, of the Civil War. It was a big issue, but it was only one issue. But at the end of the day, yes, it should be part of history, but not on our town square.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah. Another aspect of the term Indian, why it's considered offensive, is because it's so homogenous. It's sort of like thinking that all Native Americans are part of the same group of people. And they're not. There's a rich history of different groups. And the term has been so outdated. It has a connotation of like old TV stereotypes. But as far as Cleveland, good for them. Welcome to 2021. And
yes, I applaud them for changing the name. I agree with you.
The other thing, Kevin, is that the Cleveland Indians weren't always the Cleveland Indians. I want to say this is like their 5th name or 4th name. So you can't even say it was their original name because it wasn't.
Okay. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. I thought they were they were named. Oh,
that's okay to teach us.
Well, you know what? I kind of read about it today, and it said something about it had like this timeline of different dates, and it had different names. So it didn't. And I should probably Google it while we're on the call, but I don't know exactly what the other names were. But it was interesting to me that there were like 3 or 4 or 5, I think, even different names.
Yeah.
Right. They chose the Cleveland Indians because one of their like the 1890s or really early on, they had one of the first Native American players.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, supposedly that's the story I had always heard. And like that was their defense. It was like, hey, 120 years ago we had a Native American, so we're going to call ourselves the Indians. I think we still get those naming rights. It's not like we're taking their Oh, I guess we did do that too.
But Greg, you were talking about nicknames for schools. I'll bet you know the nickname for the Indiana University teams.
The Hoosiers?
Okay. Is it? I thought you had something else down earlier today. But
the Cutters.
Yeah.
The Cutters.
The Cutters, if you ever saw the film Breaking Away.
Yeah. Oh, the Cutters. Oh, yes. I remember that film. It was a good movie.
Breaking Away is probably one of my favorite movies, and it centers around a bike race.
Yeah, the townies who were in the bike race. They called themselves the, what was it?
The Cutters. And I love that film. It's been my favorite film. Dennis Quaid is in it.
Yep.
Daniel Stern.
It's a wonderful movie. Yes.
A wonderful film. It's probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
I've never seen it. Now I have to put it on my list.
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
So good.
But anyways, we went down a rabbit hole there. So we wanted to mention Indiana University because apparently they put in place a vaccine mandate for their students for this coming fall. And it passed with a federal judge who said that it's cool for a public university to have a vaccine mandate.
Yeah. So 8 students had sued the school, claiming that they violated their 14th Amendment. Okay.
Right. Yes.
And the 14th Amendment saying that no state may deprive any person of life, liberty, and property without any due process of law, blah, 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 blah. So these 8 kids, we'll call them the COVID 8. Oh, I love that. We'll call them the COVID 8.
Ooh.
I know. See, they're famous now. The COVID 8 wanted saying like, we don't have to show our papers. We may or we may not, but you can't stop us. But the judge's ruling said, recognizing the student's significant liberty to refuse unwanted medical treatment, the 14th Amendment permits Indiana University to pursue a reasonable, wait for it, and due process of vaccination in the legitimate interest of public health for its student, faculty, and staff. And then the judge took his mic out and dropped it. And everyone was like, what? This is huge because from this ruling, it's a state school and it was a federal judge. Schools can now do this. Okay. Government places can do it, and dare say it, like military. We can start saying things like government contracts. If you do not have your vaccination, and going forward, we may be seeing airlines. Oh, you don't have a vaccination card? Looks like you're not flying today. Okay. These are all things that could start happening.
So, Linda, where do you fall on this? I mean, you and I have had many conversations about vaccines. We were among the early adopters in our state and ran out to get it, even physically driving great lengths to find places where we could get them. I know in your family, there was some pushback from at least one member of your family.
Yeah.
Where do you fall with the idea of mandates, both for vaccines and going back to mask mandates?
So I actually read about the Indiana state deal. And the thing is, they didn't just say, okay, that's it. If you're not vaccinated, that you can't come to school. They allowed for, religion and health issues, right?
Well, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And they actually gave alternatives. They said, okay, if there are religious or health reasons why you can't be vaccinated, then you need to wear a mask. You have to social distance, whatever. I believe that the COVID 8 in quotes, your new coined phrase.
I love it.
Took it even further, and they said, well, it was against their religion to wear a mask. So
what?
That's what I read. There's one article that I read that said that they were like pushing back against the mask, saying and they said, well, then too bad. Then you can go to school either online or you can find another school. So I'm okay with the whole Indiana state thing because they gave them alternatives. And they said, well, here, we're going to accommodate religion. We're going to accommodate health. Here in Texas, I mean, I am pro-vaccination, okay? But there are some people that aren't. And there's somebody actually in our neighborhood, Kevin, that doesn't vaccinate their children.
Yes, I know.
And the reason, and I said, well, how do you get away with, getting the kids enrolled in school and whatnot? And she said, I just say it's for religious reasons. It's not, but that's as simple as she says. So, I don't like that either. So I guess that was a long explanation to say, I believe that if you absolutely have religious reasons, if you have health issues, you should be able to make that decision, but so should Indiana State, right? So I think everybody has to make a stance somewhere, right? Either you do or you don't. It's black and white. Okay, Indiana State says you need to be vaccinated. Well, if you don't agree with that, then don't go to Indiana State. Go to another college. It doesn't require it.
Or take your coursework online.
Yeah. But I do think that people have a responsibility for public health. Now, I have a daughter who's pregnant that didn't get vaccinated. Because in her opinion, there's not enough studies that show how it affects a fetus or a pregnant woman or whatever. But yet you read other studies that say, women who are pregnant should absolutely get vaccinated. I don't disagree with her, by the way.
Does she plan to get vaccinated when she gives birth?
Yeah, her husband's vaccinated. Yeah. Her child isn't yet. Her existing child is not yet. She has a 4-year-old, and she has not agreed to that yet, but they haven't offered them to her 4-year-olds yet that I know of. She made that decision, and I have to respect it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, with that said, if there's places that she can't go because she's not vaccinated, well, that's okay. You make your decisions. People have to make their own decisions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And again, I mean, we're kind of dancing around the essence of the debate here, which is what you're saying is people have to make their own decisions. But what happens when you have people, in this case, some 50% or more of the United States, who have made the decision, well, we don't want to get vaccinated for whatever reason? That creates a public health issue, specifically endangering them, but also endangering, in some cases, other people. And I guess that's what this topic is about, is where do you draw the line from the individual right to the collective rights or the collective good?
Yeah. And you know what, Kevin, that's something I don't have an answer for, honestly. I think that, people have to be responsible, but not everybody is, right?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. What do you think, Greg?
Personally, I think that as soon as we hit when we called this a world pandemic, and I'm not a big believer of suspension of rights, but this was something that, yes, we've had 600,000 people die. It's hard to argue that this was a hoax. It's not. And there are still news people who are saying, well, I think we're over this now. Don't get vaccinated. And these people need to be either censured, put in jail, their cable company needs to be fined.
Well, Fox News this week very publicly kind of moved toward the center on this, with several of their hosts publicly suggesting that their listeners or their viewers at least consult their doctor and weigh the science and the medical evidence, which is much more open-minded than they'd been in the past.
Right.
And that's good. Unfortunately, I heard that one or two of them sort of backpedaled on that afterwards. But, any move towards progress is good. Something that I wanted to mention in this podcast today, because I've been thinking about it, I'm confused about a lot of the issues that we're discussing. Not so much vaccinations. I truly think that everyone who doesn't have a medical reason not to get vaccinated should get vaccinated. But, I think part of the problem is the experts keep telling us, well, we're going backwards now and the cases are peaking again. And we're going back to where we were during the summer of June of 2020 or whatever it was. But the raw numbers are so low right now that I think it's confusing to a lot of people, because you look at it and you say, a year and a half ago, we had 2,000 to 3,000 and sometimes close to 4,000 people dying a day. And that was very easy for everyone to grasp who was not insane. You go That's a 9/11 happening every day.
Yeah.
And people saw the seriousness of it. We're now down to somewhere between 200 and 250 people dying nationally every day. And I think a lot of people look at that and go, well, what's the big deal? I mean, there's car crashes, there's cancer, there's heart attacks, there's pool accidents, people die. Why are they making a big deal of this? So to put it in context, if you think about 200 to 250 people dying a day from one thing, that's like one airliner going down a day. And if we were in that situation, we wouldn't tolerate that. So I think nationally, because if you go locally from state to state to state, the numbers get so small that it's hard to really understand the gravity of the situation. But it's still a large national concern.
Yeah, I check Ohio's numbers every day. And I think yesterday we had 660 people sick. New cases, I should say. Which, when I said that, the day before, I think we had almost 900. I think we had 800 and something. Someone said, see, who cares? We have millions of people in Ohio.
Right.
And they're like, this is nothing. And I was like, first of all, these are only people that we found out about, that we knew, that went to the hospital, that got tested. And I was like, so there could be even more. And they're like, well, sure, but who cares? And they're like, this is not a big deal. We're done with this. We're moving on. This is just something that's always going to be in the background.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's a big deal if it's your father or your brother or your sister or your loved one that dies, right? It's not a big deal because 660 is a number, but it's a big deal when it's your loved one.
And it's a big deal if you happen to be standing next to the person who's asymptomatic and you've never been vaccinated, because then you're at risk.
And we're talking to you, Republican males between the ages of 25 and 50, because that right now is the largest group of people who have not been vaccinated. And I know we have a large group of Republican males who listen to our show, so I don't know what it will take to get you. I will put something on your answering machine to your outgoing message if you get vaccinated and you're a Republican white male. So,
well, again, and to build on that thought, to all of the conspiracy buffs, the QAnon people out there, or people who are just highly skeptical of everything that we're talking about, again, let's take that airplane disaster and make it more specific. Suppose once every day, an airplane that was predominantly populated with Republicans, 80% Republicans, was going down. Wouldn't you start to think, well, this is some type of a conspiracy to kill Republicans if planes that are mostly filled with Republicans are going down every day? Well, that's what's happening with COVID, because the people who are not getting vaccinated tend to be on the right side of the political spectrum. They tend to be conservative Republicans. And unfortunately, they're the ones that are ending up mostly, not completely, but predominantly, they're the ones that are ending up in the hospitals or ending up in the morgues. I hate to make it political, but that's real.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if has anybody ever done a study of who's actually dying, if it's one party versus another?
Well, they've done studies of who's getting vaccinated and who's not. And the people that are not getting vaccinated, a great majority of them are of the Republican Party. So have they gone into hospitals and looked at the voter registration cards of the people who are being intubated? No. But when you could take one statistic, which is that people who are not vaccinated are predominantly not Democrats. And then you say people who are not vaccinated are the ones that are dying in greater proportions. It's pretty easy to correlate those two.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So not to hang too much of a giant lantern on that. Well, we're still on the topic of vaccines. Eric Clapton apparently made an announcement this week. Greg, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Clapton had said that he would no longer play any venues, or he wouldn't play a venue that requires people to show vaccine immunization. And so that's his pick on it. It's one of the reasons I've been so disappointed in Eric Clapton recently. He also sided with he did an anti-vaccine recording with Van Morrison.
Van Morrison.
Yeah, I mean, he has just gone full I don't want to say insane, but crazy. Well, we should say that. That's the more clinical term. And it just seems like he's like, I'm an elderly man now. There's nothing that could hurt me because I've reached such an age that no diseases hurt the elderly. So what do I care?
I haven't followed this story, so the only thing I know about it is what you've told me. But I just want to clarify, is his issue with the vaccine or that he doesn't want to play a venue that requires the audience to show proof of vaccines because he feels that's somehow unfair to his fan base? I'm not clear on that.
I think it's both because so Eric Clapton apparently had a very bad reaction to the vaccine, and I guess it affected his joints and his ability to play the guitar, and he wasn't sure if he'd ever be able to play again. So he is vaccinated. He just had a really bad reaction to it. So he felt. I think part of it is that he felt that. He's not going to require his fans to go through that same, and again, in quotes, torture that he feels that he went through.
Oh, right. Okay.
Eric Clapton hasn't cared about his fans since 1963.
Ooh.
I'll say this. I think he's one of the biggest jerks in rock and roll.
Ooh, I did not know this.
He has on record said racist tirades. He's been saying them for I'm not the first
I remember
one.
the Keep Germany White tirade that he had. I think it was Keep Germany White when he was somewhere.
Keep England
right. White. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There were other people who said Keep Germany White.
That's true.
That's true. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of those assholes. But no, and then when pressed on it, he would say, well, like, I don't think I really have to apologize for those statements. In fact, I think you should apologize to me for bringing this up. I'm Eric Clapton. Let me show you the same four licks that I've been playing.
Yeah, he blamed it on the drugs.
Yeah. Everyone else was cool and mellow as heck, and he's comes a racist. Yeah, see, Sorry.
This is a whole new side of Eric Clapton that I didn't know anything about.
Yeah. Oh, you're kidding. Oh, there's great books, and I spend way too much time. First of all, never meet your heroes, never meet your idols.
Yeah.
Second of all, never read books about your heroes or idols. I mean, it's terrible.
Kevin, can I just say something about the Eric Clapton thing? I think I feel a little bit differently about it. I think it goes back to the same reason that I think Indiana State University can say, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come here. I think, again, Eric Clapton has a right to say, I don't want to play a venue or not. I mean, I think that's his right. Do I agree with his stance? Not necessarily, but am I okay with him having that stance? Yeah, I am.
Fair enough.
I think it goes back to, it's a free country. You don't want to play a certain place, don't play a certain place.
Fair.
You are absolutely right. He's got every right. And I'm not going to march him out there into a safer environment than he deserves. You're right. I'm not going to say, look, we've taken more precautions. We've brushed off all the broken glass. We're not. And that's his right, but he still comes off as someone who's an asshole. Do you guys know the brown M&M story about Van Halen?
Yes.
Well, I may know it. Why don't you tell it?
So Van Halen had in their rider, and a rider is a list of demands that a band wants. It had all these demands, but right in the middle, it said that they wanted a giant bowl of only brown M&Ms. And for years, everyone thought they were just the biggest assholes in the world because someone would have to go through and pick out only brown M&Ms to fill this thing, right?
Yes.
And they would oftentimes go into a room, look for that brown M&Ms. If they didn't see it, they would walk out, right? And they were considered hoity-toity jerks. Years later, David Lee Roth would tell people, we had a very elaborate stage show with giant speakers and lights and more than most towns were used to. So we had all these safety concerns written into our riders. So if they weren't reading these things top to bottom, okay, then we know our roadies weren't going to be safe. So we put one thing right in the middle, okay, brown M&Ms. And we knew if they read it, then brown M&Ms would be there and our people would be safe without having to like go through and do safety checks. And if they didn't see it, they'd go, show's off, we're leaving. Our people aren't going to be safe. It's a great story.
I love this story because I'd heard the first part and I never heard the explanation.
I love the explanation because I grew up hearing about the brown M&Ms.
Yes.
But the point being, they did this so that people would be safer.
Yes.
Okay. And Eric Clapton, you're right. He's got it right. But he's doing it not so that people could be safer. It's just so people could be assholes. And people could, once again, less risk. So, yay, go David Lee Roth, Van Halen forever, Van Hagar never.
Well, I'm going to go off on a little tangent because, Greg, when you said, be careful about meeting your idols, one of my idols passed away today. His name is Jackie Mason. You're probably familiar with him.
Yes.
He's a Borscht Belt comic from the 50s, became
Classic.
a nationally known comic in the 60s and 70s, and then famously did a one-man show on Broadway in the late 80s.
Yes.
A talented, funny man, one of my favorite comedians of all time. So, like everybody else, I'm writing my little RIP Facebook post today about Jackie. And I think, well, I'm going to go back and listen to some of his stuff because I want to find a good link to share with my friends on Facebook. And I'm listening to a couple of his links, which are tremendously funny. But what I'd forgotten is that the language was really racist.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's using he's telling Polish jokes and he's using terms like Chinaman. And I don't hold it against him because he was a person of his time. I'm sure if he was performing today, he wouldn't be using those terms. But it was really funny to go back and listen to it and go, oh my God, I forgot about this.
Yeah. The story I always heard, and I've actually seen some, is that when he got kicked off and banned from Ed Sullivan.
Yes, it's a true story.
Ed Sullivan thought that he was giving everyone the finger. Because he said, and I'll motion to you, and a motion to you, and a motion to you, and here's something for you. And Ed said, and you could see, I've seen the video of this where Ed Sullivan, because Ed was like, okay, you got to wrap it up. And, the guy was like, so giving him like the wrap it up finger, and he goes, the motion. And he goes, okay, well, I'm getting the finger over here. And so he goes, so a finger to you and a finger to you. And you could see where Ed's eyes are just
right.
Fire.
Right. Yeah. Jackie famously, he used his hands a lot and he would punctuate a line by using his hand and he'd push a finger up. I'm doing it right now. Only my two contemporaries can see it. And
He is
that was the
pushing his
motion that he did to Ed Sullivan, who thought that he gave him the finger. So finally, we wanted to talk a little bit about politics this week and the January 6th commission that's going to start work in the House of Representatives, I think in the next week or two. And apparently today, Nancy Pelosi named a second Republican, Adam Kinzinger, to the panel. So even though Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader, has pulled his choices from the panel because she nixed two of them, he can never say it's not a bipartisan panel because two of the people on it are Republicans. Greg, first of all, I have to stand corrected because you said a couple of weeks ago that she was going to do this. She was going to nix a couple of people. And I said, and I was so damned adamant and I was so damned wrong. I said, no, she will do it to one at most. She will not do more than one. And I was wrong. So I have to say that out loud.
You know, when the list originally came out, I thought she was only going to nix Jim Jordan. But then she nixed another doofus, and I can't remember who it is off the top of my head.
Another Jim.
Yes, that's okay. Our listeners can Google it. He's another guy who doesn't believe that January 6th was an insurrection.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, Kevin is going to be so right on this. But Kevin McCarthy set that thing up to fail. There was no way anyone was going to let, Jim Jordan, who is accused of letting his college students while he was a coach be molested. So I'm going to use the word accused while he was a coach at Ohio State. And I think people need to be aware of that he's a terrible human being. But even still, it's now a bipartisan committee. It has subpoena power. It will get things done. It will get national attention. Meanwhile, Kevin McCarthy's like, fine, we'll have our own committee on this.
Which I'm going to predict will never happen.
No, it will.
Oh, it'll happen.
It will happen. But when you have a nonpartisan minority committee,
you mean a completely partisan minority?
Completely partisan minority. This will be the GOP. They don't have subpoena power, so they really can't get much done. And in fact, no one will cover it right now. They have a one being done on COVID-19. They are doing a whole thing that it was started as a plot in Wuhan, China, and then it was set out upon the world. And even though they have no way to do any of this investigation, they can't use Department of Justice, they can't use CIA, and they can't ask anybody, really. They're just going to pull up like, hey, we know this guy on the internet. Seriously. They're going to have other Congress people testify like, I heard this. It's going to be a joke.
Yeah. I think they're going to talk a lot about the George Floyd protests and everything that happened there, and that Democrats had no problem with this. Okay, finally, let's just lighten things up a little bit and turn to what's happening in the world of entertainment and pop culture. Ted Lasso apparently is returning to the Apple TV airwaves. You can't call it airwaves, can you? I don't know what you call it anymore. A streaming platform.
The
streaming platforms, of course.
Yeah. I don't like that. I liked airwaves better. But Ted Lasso returns now. I have to confess, not a fan. Not a fan. Greg, what about you?
God, I think we keep having this discussion, and I told my wife that you weren't a fan, and she said you've got to leave this podcast. You got to cancel. She's like, I don't know who that man is. I think it's the best show on TV.
Wow.
I think it's one of the few shows that is positive without being saccharine. I think it's just a really, really good show that makes me feel good about myself. There's a lot of shows that I like. I just watched the He-Man reboot by Kevin Smith. And I mean, it's awesome. And it's totally dark for a kid's show, right? Remember He-Man and the Masters of the Universe? There's all sorts of twists and turns, and people die and terrible things happen. And I remember watching it going, oh my gosh. And I don't know if I felt good about myself, but I liked it. But Ted Lasso is like lemonade on a hot day. Like I felt like, yeah, this is great. My only complaint was they only released one episode this week. So.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I got to tell you, by the way, you turned me on to a series that I've become a big fan of, which is Mythic Quest.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I really like that show.
The second season is even better.
Okay.
F. Murray Abraham is involved in it. I think he's so brilliant. I would like to say he's an underrated actor, but I mean, come on, he did Amadeus. I mean, and there's so much talent in it. Megan Gantz writes for it, who's probably one of my favorite writers. She's brilliant. So yeah, anything, look her up. Anything she does is really smart and really, really funny. Yeah, Mythic Quest is on Apple TV also. I'm hoping Apple TV is going to start sponsoring us.
Yeah, that'll be the day. Linda, any particular shows that are popular in your home?
So I am one of these people who never watched The Office until COVID.
Isn't it great?
It is such a fun show and dry and just I love it. I don't know why I never watched it before, but I had never watched it before. So
I'm glad that you're finding it. You know, people often ask me, because I happen to have worked in the area a little bit, you know, what do you think of the best shows? And people will talk about Seinfeld. They'll talk about Mary Tyler Moore. They'll talk about Murphy Brown. For my money, there are two shows that rise above all the others, The Office and Veep. I think those are the two best sitcoms so far.
Like Veep too.
So far. Now, something will come along that will surpass those, and that's fine. But those are my two favorites of all time.
Well, I'm happen to be one of those people who are Friends fans too.
Friends was a wonderful show. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Friends did not age well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, a lot of homophobia.
Yes.
There was a lot lot of episodes that they will question Joey and Chandler's friendship just for being like, they'll say like, oh, are you two like together? There's Chandler's father who is I think he's a cross-dresser.
Yeah, Morgan Fairchild, I think.
Yeah, it's Morgan
played.
Fairchild.
Yeah. Or that was the mom. No, the mom was Morgan Fairchild.
No, the dad was Morgan. Oh, the mom was from Body Heat.
Kathleen Turner?
Kathleen Turner.
Yes.
Oh, I'm confused.
So, I know we probably confused you, but the mom, his mom was this like romance novel, kind of like older, cougarish woman. And his father was a drag queen, transsexual.
Oh, one of them was playing. Oh, okay.
Okay, right. And
which one was? Who was playing that?
Kathleen Turner.
Turner.
Okay. And they didn't handle it well by today's standards, even by their then standards, because there were a lot of jokes. There were a lot of, I don't want to say shittiness, but yeah, okay, shittiness. So there's that. Yeah. Hey, did you watch, Kevin? CNN just did the history of sitcoms.
Yeah, they're running, I think, a 5 or 6 part series. They've run, I think, 3 episodes so far, 2 or 3 episodes. Not a fan of that either. Not a fan of that either.
I started watching it and I'm like, not that I'm a huge CNN fan. Not that I'm like, CNN is doing sitcoms. Oh my. I would have rather have seen like NBC do a shot at it. And I know NBC would have been biased, but maybe PBS or something like that.
Here's my problem with it. If you're going to call it the history of sitcoms, do a real analysis study of the history of sitcoms. What this is just kind of a nostalgic look back at different shows, mostly from the 80s and 90s. They don't really go back. They talk about a couple of shows in the 70s. But there's a history of sitcoms that goes back to the early 1950s and before that on radio that they haven't even touched. Beyond that, what I think happened is, this is my theory. CNN had, they started about a year or two ago when Jeff Zucker took over, doing these history of the 60s, history of the 70s, history of the 80s series, because they were trying to fill airtime on Sunday nights when there wasn't enough news to justify people watching the news 24 hours a day. And each one of those, history of the 80s, the segment that I think was always the most popular was the television segment, because otherwise you're just rehashing the news and people don't really care that much about that. And I think what they realized is, hey, this is the most popular 12 minutes of every episode of that series. Let's just produce 5 episodes of this to fill our summertime. And that's what they did. And again, if it appeals to people, and some people maybe are learning about shows that they never knew about, fine. But for people like me, and I wish Ward were here to speak to it, I think he'd agree with me. For people like us who actually know something about sitcoms, it's rather cotton candy.
I'll tell you what, that's our next podcast. We'll pick a sitcom every week and we'll just talk about it. I would have a blast. Oh, I guess the last thing I do want to talk about, this is what I'm listening to real quick.
Yes.
So on Record Store Day, do you guys know about Record Store Day?
No.
Record Store Day is a thing for vinyl. There's special releases on vinyl only. And this year, the Foo Fighters put out a special Record Store Day release, and it just was released on iTunes and Spotify, and it was called the DGs, Deegees, Hail Satin. And first of all, that name Hail Satin is awesome. But the first part of it is BG covers. Okay, so it's the Foo Fighters doing BG covers, and you would think that it would be like just heavy metal. No, I mean, they cover it just like the Bee Gees. It's so good. The drums are a little bit more pronounced. It's my favorite album ever. And then the second half of it is some rare cuts of just Foo Fighters. It is so good. It's like Shadow Dancing, More Than a Woman.
Wow.
All those classic. It's about 5 Bee Gees stuff. If you have not gotten the DG's Hail Satin, it's been almost nonstop on my rotation.
Wow. Okay. Well, I love the Bee Gees.
Downloading it tonight.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then text me or email me or whatever your choice of communication. You'll be like, this is the best thing I've listened to in quite a while. I mean, it is
I
like
love the Foo Fighters and I love the Bee Gees, so it's got to be great, right?
It's got to be great. It's. I'm so excited. I've been talking to everyone I meet, and so good.
First concert ever, the Bee Gees,
Wow.
1973.
Was it good?
Oh yeah,
I'm sure it would be.
Yep. So, hey, so that is a podcast. So I want to thank everybody for listening. If you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. And don't forget to share our link on your Facebook timeline and tell your friends to discover us as well. I want to announce that we're going to probably be doing at least one more episode at the end of the month, but then we're going to be taking some time away from this, but we're going to be running some pre-recorded podcasts that we think will hold your interest, and then we'll be back at the end of August or early fall. But we're still coming back one more time, so I just wanted to kind of prepare Sally so she doesn't have a heart attack. And if you would like to join our political debate between shows, there's a Facebook group called Open Fire Politics and Entertainment, where we discuss politics, entertainment, movies, sports, pretty much anything that anybody wants to talk about. So if you'd like to join the discussion, meet us there. We'd be happy to see you there. Linda, you were fantastic. Cannot thank you enough for doing this. You are a natural.
Fun. Oh, well, I don't know about that, but thank you. I appreciate it. It was great having discussions with you all.
And Greg, keep working at it. You're going to catch on.
I'm going to try. Eventually, I'll get good at this.
Greg, you have to stop being so shy.
I know. I like to use the word demure.
Demure.
I'm actually going to pitch Linda an idea. I'm hoping she'll finance a podcast. Our first episode, we'll be talking about 3 different TV shows. We'll be talking about The Dukes of Hazzard, Knight Rider, and My Mother the Car. See how I tied that all together?
Yes.
See?
Yes.
See, I do know something about TV.
Yeah.
I'm not like you big shot TV writers, but just a fan.
I don't see how that could fail.
Oh, I know. It's not like everyone else does podcasts about TV.
Now we have to talk about Daisy Dukes, though. If we're talking about Dukes of Hazzard, were Daisy Dukes too short?
According to the IOC, yes.